I received a cease and desist letter for trademark infringement on a wine I'd never heard of, from a company my own brother started last month. The address listed for his company headquarters. My address. My vineyard. My home. They weren't just trying to steal my wine. They were trying to steal its very soul. The legacy my grandfather bled into this soil. And the worst part is, they thought I would just let them. They didn't know I had the one thing that could prove everything, and that I was finally willing to use it. You have to understand, Solstice Vineyard isn't just a business to me. It's not a collection of assets or a line on a balance sheet. It's the scent of damp earth after a spring rain. The memory of my grandfather's calloused hands teaching me how to prune a dormant vine. The exact shade of crimson the Pinot Noir grapes turn in the late afternoon sun of September. It's the place I came back to after college, not because I had failed at anything else, but because it was the only thing that ever felt like success. My grandfather, Arthur, he wasn't a businessman. He was a poet who spoke in seasons and soil. He saw something in me, a quiet patience he said my brother, Leo, never had. When he passed, he left the vineyard, all 25 acres of it to me. Not to his son, my father, not to be split with my brother. To me, it was the greatest gift I've ever received, and it was the beginning of a silent, undeclared war. My parents, bless their hearts, loved the idea of the vineyard. They loved the prestige, the scenic backdrop for family photos, the free cases of Chardonnay they can give to their friends. They do not, however, love the 14-hour days during harvest, the science of fermentation, or the crippling anxiety of a late frost. My brother, Leo, is their carbon copy. He's a dreamer, which is a polite way of saying he's 32 years old, and his primary skill is crafting elaborate business plans on cocktail napkins that never see the light of day. For years, he's drifted between projects: a gourmet food truck that never got out of the driveway, an app for rating sunsets, a plan to become a professional travel influencer without ever leaving the state. Then came Chloe, Leo's fiancée. Chloe is polished. She has a business degree she mentions within 5 minutes of meeting you, and a smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. She looks at Solstice Vineyard, not with wonder, but with a calculator. From the moment she entered our lives, the quiet pressure I'd always felt from my family dialed up to an industrial hum. It started with suggestions. "Elara, have you ever thought about franchising the tasting room?" she'd ask, swirling a glass of my award-winning rosé. "The brand has so much untapped potential." Untapped potential was Chloe's code for not making as much money as I think it should. Leo, emboldened by his new partner, started chiming in. "You know, sis, you're working yourself to the bone. I could help you. We could expand. Go national. Chloe has some amazing ideas for marketing." His offers of help always felt less like a lifeline and more like an anchor, designed to pull me down into his world of half-baked schemes, while he took credit for my life's work. They saw my passion as a character flaw, a quaint hobby that was getting in the way of real profit. They didn't understand that the soul of the vineyard was in its smallness, its integrity. I wasn't building an empire. I was tending a garden my grandfather had planted. My refusal to turn his legacy into a soulless cash machine was seen as a personal slight, a stubborn refusal to share my good fortune, and their definition of sharing was always the same. I give, they take. The simmering resentment really began to boil over last Christmas. The whole family was gathered in the main house, the fire crackling, the air thick with the smell of pine and mulled wine. I had just won a regional gold medal for our Viognier, the first major award since my grandfather's time. I was ecstatic, a fragile, hopeful kind of joy I hadn't felt in years. I'd brought the bottle to dinner, wanting to share the moment with them. My father made the toast. "To Elara," he said, holding his glass up. "And to the vineyard. Proof that with a little bit of luck, anything is possible." Luck. Not work, not sacrifice, not the years I'd spent with my hands in the dirt, learning every contour of this land. Just luck. A lottery ticket I'd happened to find. I felt the joy in my chest curdle. Chloe, of course, seized the moment. "It's absolutely incredible what you've done on your own, Elara," she said, her voice dripping with faux admiration. "But imagine what you could do with a real team. Leo is just bursting with ideas to elevate the brand. We were thinking a second label, something more accessible for a younger market. We could call it Solstice Sunsets, or something chic like that." "There is no we," I said, my voice quieter than I intended, but sharp. "The brand is the brand. It was my grandfather's." My mother jumped in, her peacemaker instincts on high alert. "Oh, honey, they're just brainstorming. It's wonderful that they want to be involved." But that was the problem. They didn't want to be involved. They didn't want to learn the chemistry of malolactic fermentation or spend a weekend fixing the irrigation pump. They wanted to slap a new label on my bottles, run a few Instagram ads, and collect the profits. They wanted the harvest without the labor. I tried to explain, again, that the value of the wine was in its authenticity, its small batch terroir. Chloe just smiled that tight, knowing smile. "Authenticity is a great marketing angle, Elara, but it doesn't pay the bills for everyone." She looked pointedly at Leo, who was staring into his wineglass like it held the secrets to the universe. The implication was clear. Your success is making his failure more obvious. You owe him. This is how you can pay. I looked around the table at my family, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was at home. I felt like I was a hostile witness in a trial for my own life. The breaking point didn't come with a bang. It came with a single, devastatingly casual email. I was in Oregon for the annual Vintner Symposium, a trip I took every year. It was my one chance to network, to learn to step away from the soil and remember I was part of a larger community. I was feeling refreshed, inspired. I'd left my vineyard manager, Matteo, in charge. Matteo had worked for my grandfather for 30 years. He was more a part of this land than the oldest oaks. He was the one person I trusted without question. The email was from a well-known wine blogger, someone I respected. The subject line was, "Question about your new tasting experience." I opened it, confused. I hadn't launched a new tasting experience. The email read, "Hi, Elara. I attended a private tasting at Solstice last Saturday. A friend of a friend got us an invite. I have to be honest, I was a bit underwhelmed. The Vineyard Select Cabernet felt thin, almost watery, and the hostess, Chloe I believe her name was quite dismissive when I asked about the bottling process. It just didn't feel like the Solstice standard I've come to love. Is this a new direction for the brand? I read it 3 times. My blood went cold. Private tasting, last Saturday. A hostess named Chloe. A wine called Vineyard Select Cabernet. I don't make a Vineyard Select Cabernet. My Cabernet is called Arthur's Reserve, in honor of my grandfather, and it's the heart of my entire operation. I walked out of the conference hall, my phone shaking in my hand. I found a quiet corner, the generic hotel art blurring in my vision. I called Matteo. Matteo, it's Elara. I need you to be completely honest with me. Was there an event at the vineyard last Saturday night? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear the wind rustling through the phone, the familiar sound of my home. Miss Elara, he finally said, his voice heavy with a sorrow that terrified me. Your brother, he said you knew. He said you approved it. My knees felt weak. I leaned against the wall. Approved what, Matteo? What happened? He and his lady, Chloe. They brought people. A lot of people. 50, maybe 60. They had their own bottles, with a new label. I did not see it up close. They told me you wanted to test a new product line and get feedback, and that you wanted me to stay in my cottage and not interfere. They said it was a surprise for you. A surprise? I sank down onto the carpeted floor of the hallway, ignoring the confused look from a passing bellhop. They hadn't just used my home. They had used my name. They had used Matteo's trust. They had stood on my land, poured their own cheap counterfeit wine, and called it mine. The blogger's words echoed in my head. Thin, watery, dismissive. They weren't just building their own brand. They were actively poisoning mine. They were burning down my grandfather's legacy to toast their own ambition. I didn't fly home in a rage. I didn't call them screaming. That's what they would have expected. It's what they would have wanted. My anger would have been proof of my irrationality, my emotional attachment, the very reason they needed to step in and take control. So I did the opposite. I became ice. On the flight back from Oregon, I didn't watch a movie or read a book. I opened my laptop and started working. My mind, usually filled with the gentle rhythms of the vineyard, was now a cold, clear machine of logic. Emotion was a liability. I needed facts. When I landed, I didn't go to the main house. I went straight to the winery's small office, the one I'd built in the corner of the bottling facility. The first thing I did was check the security system logs. My grandfather had installed simple motion-activated cameras years ago, mostly to keep an eye out for deer or trespassers. They weren't high-tech, but they recorded to a local hard drive. I scrolled back to last Saturday. 7:15 p.m. Leo's car pulls up. 7:18 p.m. Chloe gets out, carrying 2 cases of wine. The labels weren't clear, but the bottles were not mine. 7:30 p.m. to 8:30 Sats p.m. A steady stream of cars, people dressed for a party laughing, walking into my tasting room as if they owned it. Next, I went to the cellar. I do inventory like a monk prays, religiously, meticulously. Every bottle is accounted for. I pulled out my logbook, and there it was, a discrepancy. 6 cases of my high-end glassware, the delicate Riedel glasses I reserve for special tastings, were missing. They weren't broken. They were gone. Then I checked the storeroom. A pallet of blank shipping boxes I'd ordered months ago was half empty. What could they possibly need blank boxes for? It hit me like a physical blow. They weren't just serving their own wine. They were selling it. From my property. Using my supplies. The final piece of the puzzle came from Matteo. I walked over to his small cottage at the edge of the property. He was sitting on his porch, staring out at the vines, his face etched with worry. He stood up the moment he saw me. "Miss Elara, I'm so sorry. I should have called you." "You have nothing to be sorry for, Matteo," I said, and I meant it. "They lied to you. Can you tell me what you saw?" He nodded. He described the cars, the music. He told me he saw Leo and Chloe directing people, handing out glasses. And then he gave me the smoking gun. "One of the guests. He parked near my cottage," Matteo said, his eyes fixed on a distant point. "He left his trunk open for a minute. It was full of wine cases. The box had a name on it. I saw it clearly. Viridian Vines. Viridian Vines." It sounded exactly like something Chloe would invent. Elegant, meaningless, designed to sound expensive. I thanked Matteo, told him again he had done nothing wrong, and went back to the office. A quick search online confirmed it. Viridian Vines LLC, registered 1 month ago. The registered agents were Leo Miller and Chloe Vance. And the official business address, the one listed with the state? 125 Solstice Lane. My address, my vineyard. They had created a phantom company and tethered it to the heart of my own. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a simple misunderstanding or an impulsive party. This was a calculated, premeditated plot to build their future on the foundations of my life and on the grave of my grandfather's. I saved a copy of the security footage. I took photos of the inventory log. I printed out the business registration for Viridian Vines. I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt a profound and terrible clarity. The kind of clarity you feel just before a storm breaks. If you want to understand why I didn't just scream at them, why I didn't immediately throw them out, you have to understand the soil this was all grown in. My childhood was a masterclass in managing my brother's ego. Leo was the sun, and I was expected to be a pale, accommodating moon, reflecting his light and never daring to shine on my own. It wasn't malicious. Not really. It was just the way things were. He was the boy, the dreamer, the one who needed room to find himself. I was the girl, the responsible one, the one who was expected to have already found herself and, preferably, be using that discovery to help him. I remember one year, I was maybe 12, and I built this incredibly complex model of the solar system for the school science fair. It had gears and tiny motors. Mercury actually orbited faster than Neptune. I'd spent months on it in the garage, poring over my grandfather's old engineering textbooks. I was so proud. The night before the fair, Leo was helping me carry it to the car. He wasn't paying attention, trying to show off some stupid kick flip on his skateboard at the same time. He tripped. The entire project, my delicate clockwork universe, crashed onto the concrete. It shattered. I didn't yell. I just stared at the wreckage, a knot of grief tightening in my chest. Leo started crying, not because he felt bad for me, but because he knew he'd be in trouble. When my parents came out, my mother rushed to comfort Leo. My father looked at the broken model, and then at me. "Well," he said with a heavy sigh. He didn't mean it. "What are we going to do now?" I spent the entire night in the garage with my grandfather, painstakingly gluing planets back onto their orbits. We got it working, mostly, but it was scarred. It was wobbly. The next day at the fair, when the judges came to my table, my mother put her arm around Leo and said, "They worked on it together. Leo is so creative, and Elara is so good at putting things back together." I got a blue ribbon, but it felt like a lie. Even then, my role was set. I was the fixer of things my brother broke. That dynamic never changed. When I got into a better university than he did, my parents worried about how it would affect his self-esteem. When I saved up and bought my first sensible car, my father borrowed it for a week to help Leo move after he got evicted from his apartment. When my grandfather announced he was leaving me the vineyard, the silence from my parents was deafening. They didn't congratulate me. They called a family meeting a week later, without me, to discuss the situation. My father later told me they were just concerned it was too much for me to handle alone. But I knew what they meant. It was too much for me to have alone. It wasn't fair. Leo deserved a piece of it. The pressure was constant, a low-grade hum of emotional blackmail. "Your brother has so many brilliant ideas, Elara. If only he had the capital." "It must be nice not having to worry about rent, honey. Leo and Chloe are really struggling." Every success of mine was framed as a failure of theirs. They saw my inheritance not as my grandfather's faith in me, but as a resource I was hoarding. They genuinely believed they were entitled to it, that my refusal to fund Leo's life was a form of cruelty. They couldn't see the years of my labor, only the fruits of it. So when I discovered what they'd done, the secret party, the counterfeit wine, the shell company, I knew it wasn't an aberration. It was the culmination of a lifetime of this thinking. They hadn't just stolen from me. They believed, in their hearts, that they were simply taking what was rightfully theirs. And that was the most heartbreaking realization of all. I let 3 days pass. 3 days of silence. I went about my work, bottling the last of the Chardonnay, walking the rows, checking the new buds. On the outside, I was calm. Inside, I was meticulously assembling my case. I called the wine blogger, and, after apologizing profusely, got a written statement of her experience. I contacted the shipping supply company and confirmed the delivery address for the blank boxes matched my own. I even found a few public Instagram posts from the private tasting, people tagging my vineyard, holding glasses of red wine with the hashtag #ViridianVines. They were so arrogant, they hadn't even bothered to be careful. Then I sent a single text message to my parents, Leo and Chloe. "Family meeting. My office. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. It's important." I knew they'd come. They would assume I was caving, that I'd finally seen the logic of their plan and was ready to negotiate my surrender. They walked in the next morning looking triumphant. Chloe was holding a leather-bound portfolio, and Leo had a smug, self-satisfied look on his face. My mother was carrying a plate of muffins, her standard peace offering. My father stood behind them, a silent, looming presence of patriarchal approval. "Elara, sweetie, I'm so glad you called this meeting." My mother started, setting the muffins on the corner of my desk. "We have some exciting things to show you." Chloe opened her portfolio. "We've run the initial numbers," she said, her voice crisp and corporate. "With a proper launch strategy, and by leveraging the Solstice brand equity for the first year, Viridian Vines could see a 7-figure revenue stream by year 3. We're prepared to offer you a 20% equity stake for use of the facilities and for your advisory role." I let her finish. I let the silence hang in the air for a full 10 seconds. I didn't look at her proposal. Instead, I picked up a thin folder from my desk and pushed it to the center. "What is this?" my father asked, frowning. "Evidence," I said calmly. I opened it. The first page was the printout of the Viridian Vines LLC registration, with my address highlighted in yellow. Leo paled. The second was the security log showing them arriving. The third was a photo of the missing inventory. The fourth was a collection of screenshots from Instagram. The last was the written statement from the wine blogger. "You hosted an illegal, unlicensed event on my property," I said, my voice even and cold. "You served unvetted wine under a counterfeit brand that you tied to my business address, potentially violating dozens of federal and state liquor laws. You stole my supplies, you damaged my brand's reputation, and you lied to my staff. This isn't a business proposal. It's a crime scene." My mother gasped. "Elara, that's not fair. They were trying to build something for themselves. They were trying to build it on top of me." I shot back, my voice finally rising. I looked directly at Leo. 30 years, Leo. For 30 years, I have been told to step aside for you, to fix what you break, to share what I earn. When did it stop being enough? When did you decide that sharing wasn't good enough, and you had to start stealing?" Leo just stammered, looking at Chloe for help. She was the one who spoke, her voice sharp with indignation. "This is a family matter. You're being incredibly dramatic. Nobody got hurt. We were going to cut you in. This is just your ego talking because you can't stand to see Leo succeed without you." "Succeed?" I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You call this success? Lying, cheating, and stealing from your own sister? Grandfather left me this vineyard because he knew I would protect it. He knew I would honor it. And he knew you," I said, locking eyes with my brother, "would have sold it for parts within a year to fund your next stupid dream. He saw you for exactly what you are. And now, so do I." My father finally spoke, his voice a low rumble of disappointment. But it wasn't directed at Leo. It was directed at me. "Arthur was wrong to put you in this position. He turned you against your own family. This land should have been for all of us." That was it. That was the moment everything broke for good. They didn't see the betrayal. They saw the disruption of what they believed was the natural order. "Get out," I said. "All of you. Get off my property." My mother started to cry. "Elara, don't do this." "I'm not doing anything," I said, standing up. "You already did it." They left the muffins on my desk. The first letter was sent the next day. It wasn't from me. It was from a lawyer I'd hired in the city who specialized in intellectual property and trademark law. The cease and desist was brutal and efficient. It demanded they immediately dissolve Viridian Vines LLC, recall any product they may have distributed, scrub all online references connecting their brand to my vineyard, and sign a legally binding document promising to never again use the Solstice name, property, or brand in any commercial or private venture. It also included a bill for the stolen glassware, the missing shipping boxes, and an estimated cost for brand reputation damages, citing the blogger's testimony. It was, in no uncertain terms, a declaration of war, and the fallout was not loud, but it was absolute. My mother called me, weeping, accusing me of destroying the family. "He's your brother," she cried. "You're supposed to protect him." "No," I replied, my voice devoid of the emotion she was trying to provoke. "I'm supposed to protect this vineyard. Grandfather entrusted it to me, and Leo tried to burn it down. My only mistake was not seeing it sooner." She hung up on me. Leo and Chloe, faced with a legal battle they couldn't possibly afford or win, complied with every demand. Their pathetic little empire crumbled before it ever began. I heard through the grapevine of the local winemaking community, a world that suddenly saw me with a new, grudging respect, that Chloe left him a month later. Her ambition had no room for a partner with no assets and no prospects. Leo, I heard, moved back in with my parents. The silence from them was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. No more casual Sunday dinner invites. No more texts asking for a case of wine. No more backhanded compliments or passive-aggressive suggestions. It was a complete and total severance. The bridge hadn't just been burned. The chasm it once spanned had been wiped from the map. Sometimes late at night I'll sit on the porch of the main house, the house my grandfather built, and look out over the rows of sleeping vines. There's a profound loneliness to it, a quiet that I'm still learning to distinguish from peace. I sold the smaller house on the property, the one my parents always thought should have been Leo's. I didn't need the money, but I needed the space. I needed to cut away every last tendril of their influence. My life is smaller now, and yet it feels infinitely larger, because it is, for the first time, entirely my own. The vineyard is thriving. The scandal, once it was understood, actually bolstered my reputation. I became known as a woman who didn't compromise on quality, who protected her legacy fiercely. A woman like her grandfather. The hardest lesson is that sometimes the people who are supposed to be your harbor are actually the storm. For years, I thought my duty was to them, to keep the peace, to manage their feelings, to absorb their disappointments. I thought that was love. But I was wrong. Love isn't about setting yourself on fire to keep others warm. Love is about tending to the things that have been entrusted to you, whether it's a piece of land, a talent, or your own soul. Protecting my grandfather's legacy meant I had to betray my family's expectations of me. It was a choice I never wanted to make, but I've come to understand it was the only choice I had. True strength isn't about how much you can carry for other people. It's about knowing what you must refuse to pick up in the first place. The weight of their dreams was never mine to bear, and that's the whole story. It's been a year, and the silence continues. Some people in my life, the few I've told, think I went too far, that a legal battle was a nuclear option for a family dispute. Others say I should have sued them for everything they had. I find myself caught in the middle, wondering if I did the right thing. So, I'm asking you, did I draw a necessary line in the soil to protect my life's work? Or did I destroy my own family over a few bottles of wine? Let me know what you would have done. Your perspective means more than you know.